All right. People are joining in. Welcome, everyone. Great to have you join. Webinar is going to get started in just a couple of minutes. There's our friend Jessie. She's jumping in with my name on her again. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're going to take a minute or so. The webinar starts precisely at the top of the hour right now, so we'll give you all a minute or two to get logged in. Looking forward to talking about the sales funnel and consumer behavior and challenges and opportunities with our panelists, who I'm going to introduce in just a little while. I hope everyone is enjoying their spring. We had a great HFA in the spring. We had a great FIBO. Some other great events coming up I'll talk about briefly next week. SIBEC, I'll be keynoting that, which will be a great event. And then we have Beyond Active in Singapore, which is going to be a great event. We'll talk about that as well briefly. I cannot believe it's May 6th already. Good Lord. The year's almost half over already. It seems like it was Christmas yesterday. We'll give you all about another minute, and then we'll get kicked off here. Talking about sales funnels and consumer behavior and challenges and opportunities with our guest from Keepme. Ian, if you're listening in, best wishes to you. Haven't talked to you since our pod. I guess that was a month and a half ago or so, give or take. Great things going on at Keepme. All right, everyone's joining in. Again, great to have you join. We have quite a lot of people from all over the world registered today, so thank you for that. Always a pleasure to share some information. We try to keep these webinars brief and cogent. Of course, they're going to be recorded and shared in a number of vehicles, so if you miss something here, you can get back to it and listen again at a later time. So let's get started. Today, we're going to, of course, introduce our panelists. We'll do an overview. What do you find most interesting today in fitness, in the industry we're in? We'll talk about sales funnels, challenges, and opportunities. We'll share a little research from Keepme about those challenges. And we're going to talk a little bit about tech and strategy, what is working, which operators are setting the bar, who's doing really well and how, and what do we see ahead? And then we'll have a little Q&A. So I look forward to that very much. And so before we get into introducing our guests, as I mentioned, I'll be at SIBEC next week keynoting. I hope to see you there. And then in Singapore at Beyond Active, where I'll be keynoting as well. So please stop by and say hello. Look forward to that. And also this event will be on the podcast, Fitness Plus Technology Pod, as well as my talks at SIBEC and Beyond Active, which we broadcast those on the podcast. So if you'd like to hear what I have to say or learn a little something, hopefully check out the podcast. Today, I have the great pleasure of having my colleagues Sarah Harris and Hilary McGuckin on the webinar today. I got to see them in person at HFA. Sarah, you're joining us from Michigan?
Yep, Northwest Michigan.
And you oversee the Americas with client success. I know you have a background in the industry working at different firms, so it's a pleasure to see you. Thanks for joining today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the director of growth and client success over North America. Kind of a unique role in the sense that I get the opportunity to see our partners through. So not just from the early sales stage, but all the way through implementation and the optimization of the platform as well, which is great for me because it's always been more of a consultative approach that I've taken and had a coached mentality. So it's been a good fit for sure.
Well, great to see you again. And then my Irish friend, Hilary from Belfast, the digital marketing guru. How are you doing today, Hilary?
I'm great. Yeah, in Belfast, not nearly as exotic or fun as Michigan, but yeah, got to represent.
I love Belfast. Anybody that's Irish from Belfast, of course, I have a little bit of an inclination to, given my name and heritage. So
absolutely.
welcome, welcome, Hilary. So let's dive right in for the audience. And again, welcome everyone. So, ladies, what interests you most about the industry landscape today? What's on your mind, and what do you see, and what do you think about it?
Well, for me personally, what I'd say I'm most excited about, coming from a PT and operations background, again with that coach mentality I mentioned, right, is seeing the focus on the importance of holistic health and recovery, as well as the functional movement has been amazing. So, for a long time we've seen in the gym business, people strictly pushing membership and on to the next one and the
Mhm.
next. But over the last few years, and I think in the foreseeable future, seeing that shift kind of migrate towards more of a service-oriented approach and incorporating technology as a tool and stuff like that is going to be really exciting to see. In not just the personalization of fitness and goals and how our members are achieving those, but from
Mhm.
the operational standpoint as well, to really let the operators focus on more of the service portion of the business.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I would echo that in a slightly different way, albeit probably a very similar sentiment. I think what excites me the most is the pace that I'm now seeing operators evolve. I am, like Sarah, I've been an operator as well, and I served my time through my early 20s and all through uni. And I did everything from front of house to marketing and sales, and even Sunday morning debt collection, which at the time we called retention. Clearly, it's very, very different thing. And that was 7 years where everything was manual and everything was impersonal. So when I re-entered the fitness industry in 2023, under Keepme, obviously, I just started to see that so much was changed. So I was delighted with that. But the only things really that stood out to me was a basic level of automation and some level of personalization. But now in 2025, just 2 years later, the tide has changed so rapidly, and the
Mhm.
adoption and the interest in these more advanced infrastructures or concepts it's really taking hold, isn't it?
Mhm.
It is of more interest to the people at the top of the tree. So from a marketer's perspective, I'm really excited to see what that means for those teams, for the sales and marketing teams who've been frustrated for years.
Yeah, that's a great summation. Yeah, I like the thought of humanize and futurize simultaneously. And we've talked about the theory of technology for many years, and then now we're dealing more and more with the practicing, the practice of actually making all that theory work, which is kind of what you're alluding to. Where you've been a part of it in the past, and all of a sudden the thoughts of doing these personalizations and bringing automation in a meaningful, thoughtful way is becoming it's reality now. And
Yeah.
that is exciting, isn't it? So let's talk about, the key challenges and opportunities and these pain points that are part of this kind of sales funnel journey that you all try to solve. What do you see?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think it's always been, the biggest pain point has always been competitive landscape, right? And getting
Yeah.
people in your doors in some aspects or another, be it brick and mortar, outside classes, online services with social media influencers, so on and so forth. But now, especially, I think, um, because our members have become so accustomed to that ease of information, be it good information or not, they're looking for that higher service level and experience, right? And wanting it a lot faster now. Kind of think of it as like a now type mentality. So with all those different options and the ease of getting them, operators are really needing to make sure that they're completely on top of their game in every aspect. Uh,
Hmm.
and the key is the consistency in doing so as well. So that's really hard to do without having technology on your side, right? And using that to your advantage. Um, so hopefully I don't upset any marketers that are on the call. But traditionally what we see is a lot of money wasted, right? Just getting thrown on marketing spend, drive more traffic, so on and so forth.
Hmm.
But I think that the issue really lies in the biggest pain point that our operators are seeing and struggling with is what's happening with that traffic and those leads once your spend is there, right?
Yeah.
So again, kind of taking a step back to fundamentals and getting people in the door. It's simple, but what's really changed is you know, how we're doing that in the tech-centric world that we're in now, right? Being able to capture that opportunity when it's there, top of funnel, not letting things slip through the cracks, and then being able to engage those prospects and members consistently with meaningful and relevant information is the biggest part. Once they're in the club, being able to provide that service and meeting them at the speed they're looking for too. So I think it really just boils down to, you know, the speed and consistency of what our prospects and members are looking for, and being able to use that tech point to their advantage.
Yeah, I absolutely. I would echo that by saying, you know, the hurdle is the fact that the sales funnel, as we know it, traditionally, it doesn't work anymore. You know, the traditional customer life cycle is actually collapsing because consumers are expecting immediate responses, or certainly within 5 minutes, regardless of what time of the day it is. And in fact, Salesforce did some research, and they've come back and said that actually 81% of consumers expect faster service or faster responses, precisely because they know technology can do it.
Yeah.
So, you know, the challenge for operators then is twofold. It's not being able to man every channel, you know, actively 24/7 to service that expectation. Or, you know, if you think you can do it by hiring loads of staff, well, that's expensive and it's impractical to have people on the graveyard shift. And how would you do that fairly if commission is at play? So, you know, you've got to think about those, the people parts, and then you've also got to think about the quality of the engagement and making sure that it's always suitably poised to take action to move the prospects to the next step.
Yeah. Accenture called it the cost of hesitation in their report that I shared in Trends. And it's really the cost of hesitation is costing companies a lot more money than they realize, because oftentimes people aren't even measuring these dynamics. All they know is maybe the close rates aren't as high as they would be, but they don't understand what the cost of not having that dynamic be managed properly in today's world, right? You all have some great research you're going to share now on some of the facts behind this reality. So let's talk about these pain points. You mentioned after hours, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did some research a while back. We did a couple of, I'll start off with the after hours, and then I can talk about our time to reply. But with the out of hours research, we were looking at the number of high intent searches that gyms were doing, or that prospects were doing looking for gyms. And we were doing that outside of operational hours. So, you know, for argument's sake, we set it that between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. was operational hours, and anything outside of that, those are like unsociable or unworking hours, although every operator is different. And in the US, 36% of all high intent gym searches are conducted after hours. And in Canada, that shoots right up to nearly 52%. So, you know, if you're not there, being able to service that moment of high intent there and there, you know, they'll just go to the next responsive competitor, you know, unless of course that your what you provide is so niche and they're looking for a niche service, or, you know, a niche club to join, then, you know, the competition is all to play for. So what I can also tell you then about is our time to reply studies. And again, we looked at 45 different North American fitness brands or clubs. Thanks, Bryan. And shockingly, in North America, 58% don't reply to email inquiries. And, you know, we, you know, obviously this was a bit of a secret shopper thing that we set up. So we were reaching out as if we were interested, and we were asking for information about membership prices and classes, and could we come in for a tour and things like that. Really, really high intent, showing that we meant business. So 58% don't reply to inquiries on email, 61% didn't reply on Facebook, and 52 on Instagram. It's crazy. And then, you know, and so the certainty of reply, we know that that's not there. But then there was also that time to respond for those who did. And honestly, that didn't tell much of a great story either. You know,
No,
you
not
know,
at
well over 200 minutes for email, and then Facebook and
Instagram.
Crazy. Crazy. Absolutely.
It's crazy. You know, it's so many brands, they don't even monitor their social channels at all. I mean, it just blows my mind with companies that I've worked with. You go in and you see all this unanswered DM traffic, and people don't even pay attention to it.
Well, that's Sorry,
That's what
Sarah, I'm talking over
no,
each other.
that's fine.
Yeah.
That's what sticks too, right? Is
Yeah.
people's, you know, we've been talking about speed and whatnot, but their experience as well, right? If
Yeah.
they get a response from somebody, or if it's a poor experience, if they get a bad answer that doesn't, you know, align with what they're looking for, that's what sticks and that's what people remember. So having that relevancy to the answers and the replies is really important as well. So
Yeah.
you know, that forms your brand just as much as getting someone in the club, you know.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely does. This is very meaningful information. I think anybody that's living in today's world would be aware of this, but it's so common that businesses aren't really paying attention to the execution aspects of actually dealing with this reality today. And it's just the way things are. It's the way consumer behavior has changed, period. Right?
Yeah. But like we were talking about earlier, Brian, you know, this is the hurdle. Okay. So,
Yep.
you know, some operators might know that this is their state of play and many others won't.
Yep.
But,
Yep.
you know, regardless of the status, if you don't have the processes or the infrastructure in place
Sure.
to actually address the problem you've identified, then what are you going to do about it? You know,
Right.
we were even shocked going through the study how many operators have their DMs activated for Facebook
Yep.
and Instagram and then are not there to reply at all. Like,
Yeah.
shut those off if you're not going to use them. Don't
That's
create holes where holes in the funnel don't need to be.
That's right. I term those execution engines. And if you don't have the execution engines, you know, it's just not going to work. And infrastructure technology, you know, infrastructure platforms that enable automation are a big component of those execution engines today. If you don't have them, you really can't drive your car very fast down the interstate without that engine running, right?
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Yeah. And then I mistakenly hit the button, didn't realize it. I got a slide ahead on you there for a minute. I apologize. So talk about this, the top of the funnel, and what we see as a result of this.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, what we've seen is obviously, like I mentioned earlier, you're pushing marketing spend, right?
Right.
To drive more traffic. In reality, the number of people that are on your website, only about 2% of that traffic actually converts to
Converts.
a lead, right?
Yep.
Meaning you've got contact information, they requested information, so on and so forth. That's what we're qualifying as a lead. So that's only 2%. So that's really where AI can come in, where if I'm on your website just looking for information, the AI can take it a step further and actually take action, give you the answers that you're looking for, have a conversation in a more natural way than me knowing if I fill out a form, somebody's gonna try to sell me, right? That
Right.
causes a lot of hesitation. So having AI on your team there and being able to naturally have a conversation and gather that contact information to convert more traffic into leads is huge as well.
Yep.
And then obviously, you know, we're talking about follow-up and getting people booked in, you know, in a timely fashion. That speaks to the leads portion that you're seeing there as well. You know, where traditionally it's only 15 to 25% of the leads are actually booking in. And that's another place where the AI agent can take place into that as far as the Keepme side of things across the board. Right. So if you continue to add up all of that drop off, you're looking at your original traffic, which is your marketing spend. About 90% of that is dropping off, where you're not even having a conversation with them. So.
Yeah. So the problem isn't a lack of interest, right? You know, you can be attracting thousands, tens, you know, maybe 10,000 visitors per month if you're lucky, but if you're not aligned with it, then how you know, of course you're going to see that 90% drop off at the bottom. You know, like I mentioned earlier, if over 30% of your high intent searches are happening outside of your business hours when there's no one there to respond, then, you know, what's the answer? Do you switch your website off at night because you don't want to get any interest in or any inquiries in at that time? And actually what we've done now is we've proven through our customers that with the right infrastructure and processes and technologies in place, now our Antares customers, 1 in 4 tours are booked outside of operational hours. So that's 25% more prospects are going to walk through those doors than would have before, because there was no one there to be instantaneous in the engagement.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating. And, you know, on kind of off point, but not with the companies I work with, it's also the idea of brand versus conversion, right? Trust and earning trust on content. We're creative now. is so important as a component to building trust. So even more so, if you're doing all that effort and content and you're not deploying this kind of discipline at the same time, I mean, it just compounds the lost opportunities that organizations have with their garnering all this attention, but they can't really convert it because they don't have the things in place to actually take advantage of that attention.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's fascinating, fascinating. Let's move on then and talk about technology and strategy then. So what is working in your opinion when we think about this business and the business goals meeting the IT technology component and the idea of being strategic and answering the question, how do you best compete? What are your thoughts on that?
I
Yeah,
think
really, I
Sarah,
mean,
you can jump in there on personalization,
Yeah.
maybe.
yeah, I was going to say it comes down, I mean, AI is something we've obviously been talking about. And having that work for you is a big thing, right? You don't want to just
Mm-hmm.
have generic automation going out.
Mm-hmm.
It's personalization and stuff. That's definitely goes deeper than a first name merge field, right? That says, hey, Sarah,
Mm-hmm.
thanks for your interest. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't personalize it any further than that. Really, being able to read between the lines, right, and give context and heart to everything that's delivered. Again, I talked about relevance earlier.
Yeah.
Having that consistent messaging and having that be relevant information I'm interested in to engage me and keep me engaged through that process is really where it starts to stand apart.
Yeah.
It needs to be something that's empathetic and commits to memory and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that it's not just another sales pitch. And you bring all of that together under the right conditions, that's going to start to drive, towards your business objectives and revenue goals without sounding tone deaf on what your prospects and your members are looking for. And also
Yes.
being able to provide that service to help the members actually tie back to their why. Because, people buy on emotion, right? So
Right.
being able to have that connection and that emotional connection to your prospects and members is going to keep them tied to your brand and your club.
Right.
Yeah. And automation's great, and I love to see so many operators using it now, but automation, even with personalization, can actually hurt your customer experience if it's
Yes.
done poorly. When it's generic or impersonal or badly timed, if it just makes the prospects feel like just another number, then, Bryan, like you were talking about, it kills trust, right?
Yeah.
And especially in an industry like fitness, where the emotional connection and that sense of community and being part of a community really matters. But when the automation is paired with context, like whether
Yeah.
or not somebody showed up for their trial, or how recently they engaged, or what questions they've asked, then that personalization within the automation becomes almost invisible. It feels more human. And in
Yes.
fact, we're actually conducting another study at the minute that looks at exactly that, like
Yeah.
how automated follow-ups and the quality of those communications are shaping the prospect experience and ultimately conversion. And we'll be measuring how thoughtful automation can, maybe this is unpopular, but outperform both the human manual effort and the basic workflows that we see in operation today.
No, absolutely true. And I like your statement there, Sarah, about empathy, and really what that is, not as a title, but in reality, and not every part of the user experience being a sales pitch, which is those things go together. And I think the problem and opportunity that exists a lot of times is people think from a sales first perspective instead of answering the question, what problem are you really solving? Do you really understand what that problem is? People
Right.
think they do, but often they do not. If
Yeah.
you really understand that, your ability to become more empathetic increases. And then the other thing you see a lot, which I'm sure you all have seen, is people not really understanding what their real user experience is and why. A lot of things get forgotten. There are holes that exist in the process. So you think you have in your mind what that looks like, but oftentimes what happens is when you're in a business, you have blinders on, you really don't see, and you need third parties to kind of help you see that, because you're in the soup, as I like to say. And so your object review, thinking about what that experience really is like is very skewed oftentimes. And I think that's a huge opportunity for organizations to figure out, how do we optimize this in a way that really feels very empathetic. It touches people. If you do that well, then you add automation to it. I think that's an alchemy everyone would like to figure out how to achieve, right?
I like that. Alchemy. That's great.
Yeah.
It's magic.
Alchemy, yeah.
That's something that I've always, talked with our partners about too, is when looking at optimizing the system, right? We get asked for playbooks a lot, right? Well, what are the best, what's your sales process? Which there's basics, right? There's always going to be that standard, I guess. But I always like to take them back to put yourself in your prospect's shoes or your member's shoes. And if you were inquiring brand new to a club, what would you expect, right? Would you expect a phone call or a text or an email? Would you want it to be personalized? Would you want it to be generic, right? And think of yourself in those shoes and through what you would expect on your member journey and apply that to your business, right? And then obviously have to speak your brand and what you offer and your services and stuff. It has to be unique. Like it can't just be a generic out of the box cookie cutter type automation.
That's right. Yeah, people sense that now too. If it's too cookie cutter, they get it real quick. They understand that it just undermines trust. And, it's just not really wise to do. So great insights. So out there in the world, who's doing this really well from your perspective? Who's doing it and how are they doing it?
One brand that I've worked with over the years across a couple different, employers that I've been with has been Active Wellness. They have always front and center had their members experience. Like that's been their main focus. Obviously they care about sales, but their main focus has been on building that emotional tie, building that results first type space, and the rest of it just flows naturally. Not that there's not work being put into it, but that's been one that has always stood out to me front center. Is how they go about their approach. It's not necessarily a sales first, but it's a service first oriented.
Yeah, that's a good one. We can also talk to you about Fitness First Singapore. They are a really great example of a brand that's absolutely nailing the AI powered approach. So they didn't just add AI, they actually rethought their entire funnel when they implemented it as a major cog in the strategy. So with Keepme, they've been combining then the intelligent approach of the agents, the AI agents, and the contextualized automation that we've been talking about. And doing that, they've been able to create that 24/7 always on sales engine. And it's not just about booking tours. Like obviously that's great. That means you've got more qualified leads, you've got more high intent leads coming in. But it's also for them about delivering the right kind of engagements at appropriate intervals, so that they, in advance of appointments, right? So that they can actually increase the show rate, like who's actually going to turn up.
Right.
And all of that, the results they're seeing are, they've had a 185% increase in their lead to tour bookings, and 16% more prospects showing up. And together they've added up to a 49% jump in their tour to sale conversions. And that's what happens when you rethink and rebuild the funnel, when you're incorporating what you understand about the psychologies of consumers and how they expect to be serviced.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I'm a big fan, as many of you know, of Basic Fit, and what they do, mobile first. They've been doing that for a while, and then they have all their own data. They do a lot of very interesting things. And I think, you can really see, do you think it's true there's becoming a separation with some of these competitors and their ability to do the things we're describing as compared to their competition? You see that a gap starting to form in some markets where others aren't really keeping up in that regard?
Well, certainly I'll jump in quickly. I'll keep it short. I'm sure Sarah has something to say. If you want to look at the difference between athletic clubs and multi-site operators, athletic clubs, they're beautiful, they're great, they've got a really strong sense of community, and they've got great sales teams. They might have guys and girls who've been working for them for 20-30 years. And that is a very personal approach, and they like to have their call sheets, and they will work heavily with the referrals, and that's working for them. But then in contrast, when you look at these modern multi-site operators or chains, you can see the difference in their approach, through their advertising and through the different interaction points they have on the site. So I think in the past, it would have been quite difficult to maybe see the difference in the sales approach or the marketing approach between those two categories. But now the divide between them is very, very obvious.
Very, very obvious.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to your point, Hilary, on the chain or franchise aspect, we've got another global chain that we're working with, where because they've adopted technology, right, and they're starting to use more of that, over 40% of the agent conversations that they're having, the AI agent that they're using with Keepme, are happening outside of business hours. And on top of that, 42% of their tours are booked in the US that are outside of hours as well. So without using that technology, they're almost losing half of what their tours would be, right? So and obviously with personalized automation and stuff like that, that's also contributed to an increased show rate that has bumped their show rate up by 25% as well, just with those little tweaks in technology. And then in other regions, their show rates improved by up to 56%. So that's all that timed, thoughtful automation, again, with the intelligence there to really feed the information when it's needed and most important.
Yeah, I like that term, thoughtful. I like that term, thoughtful. Yeah.
That's the important part for sure.
Yeah. So the road ahead, I share this breakdown of what I call the money principle as a kind of a philosophical approach to strategy. But what do we see in the years to come? I'll explain this after you share your viewpoint. But what's ahead in your view, given your focus on what we've been discussing?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're not offering that instant engagement and clear, concise answers, you're already behind, right? I think everything is kind of headed to that real time everything. Because again, I mentioned it earlier with like the now mentality, right? Everybody wants their information faster. So like I said, putting myself in the shoes of the prospect, and allowing the information that I'm looking for as a prospect to be delivered by the owner, the operator is huge. As if I was a prospect, right, and I'm looking for a fitness center, I'm not specifically looking for your brand. I might search clubs that offer a class near me or something like that. So there's going to be multiple other competitors that have my information as well and have that same opportunity. So realistically, the brand that delivers the fastest, most seamless experience is going to have that first opportunity to have a conversation, first opportunity to book a tour, first opportunity to win me as a member. Right. So I think that's what it comes down to is ultimately, if you're not offering that, you're already falling behind.
Yeah,
absolutely true.
I would add to that, the Internet of Things and the way we as consumers interact with other industries, whether that's fast moving consumer goods or just your groceries online, whatever it is, as consumers, we've now been conditioned to expect that same interaction and service and immediacy, that now mentality that Sarah's talking about from every industry, and the price tag of what you're committing to doesn't seem to matter. So everything within that life cycle is collapsing into a single moment. It's the old idea that you've got days or weeks to nurture somebody through the funnel. It's completely obsolete. And the shift is driven by technology. I mentioned earlier that Salesforce stat. Consumers expect you to keep up. And that's a reputation thing as well, isn't it? They're like, well, how good can your product or service be if you're not implementing the right technology or infrastructure to engage me? If you're not doing everything over here, why would I assume you're doing it well enough over there?
That's
because we're fickle. Consumers are fickle.
Right.
Yeah, they are. And that, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, like I mentioned earlier, that's what sticks, right? Is that first part of the experience. It's not about, thinking of it as an endpoint or anything like that. That's the start of the member journey, is that first time that they are on your website or your social media. If that's a bad experience, that sticks.
That's true. So true. And, even in the B2B world now, and McKinsey's research and others, B2B buyers, 80% of them will spend up to $500,000, and they only want to talk to a closing sales individual, for 10, 15 minutes before they make the purchase. This is the real world, even with high ticket volumes of items, like you mentioned, Hilary. And this kind of comes into, I've been talking about this concept here for about almost a decade, and we're touching on it, user experience. All right. Omnipresent, hyper personalized, frictionless commerce, strategic, convenient. That's the real world we are in today. And you got to design that purposefully. If you're not spending time on this, you really are missing the boat, because UX is the product. You can have what your product is in your head, but the user experience is the product. Execution
it's your brand.
engines. Yeah, it's your brand. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, it's not a slogan. It's not a picture. It's not those are like decorations on a Christmas tree. The Christmas tree is UX. Execution engines. If you don't have enterprise systems, the right automation, the right data, the right machine intelligence to drive UX, you can't execute it. I mean, you could think about it, but you can't execute it. So, and then, the way of new economics. Look, if you're pouring a bunch of money into marketing and you're not, converting through the right way with the execution engine and the right UX, you might as well be putting a pile of cash in your front yard and lighting it on fire every day, because that's what you're actually doing. And then finally is the mindset. You have to embrace the realities of today and the future, because if you don't, you're not going to even touch on these other things. So I hope you can see where that connects with what you all are working with your clients every day.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that that reality part is important too, right? A lot of operators are, I don't want to say stuck in the past, but stuck in the past, right? Of the way we've always done it, right? But you've got to be able to take an honest opinion or an honest look at where you're at and where the direction of the industry is going with technology and everything, and see that realistic view and an honest starting point where you're at, and then build from there.
Yeah, I think, rather than committing 5 figures to ad spend every month because you're like, oh, we're not getting enough, people through the door, we're not getting enough members. Well, take a good hard look at where the holes are in your process or in your funnel, and move that budget and fix the holes first. Because otherwise, like you said, Bryan, just go and burn that cash in the garden.
That's right.
Like, I would say, I would recommend go and invest that money in context aware systems. And make sure that they understand the who's coming in, in through your website, and fix the website, make it more representative of the brand. If you say that you're providing a high-end gym experience, well, your website needs to be a high-end prospect experience. It needs to match. So
that's all true. I just had actually with someone that had reached out. They said, well, we paid for this service that told us how much web traffic we had, but none of them were actually converting or requesting information or anything. So we did a little deep dive on their website and took a look, and pointed out some improvements and stuff like that, to your point, Hilary, with making that match with the service that they're offering. Their branding and advertising needs to match that as well.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So let's do some Q&A, see if some of our audience might have some things they'd like to ask. And again, thanks for being here, ladies. I really had a nice time, by the way, at the HFA event in Las Vegas. Thanks for stopping by. We had a lot of great folks from around the world there, and you were wonderful attendees. So what do you think? Here's a question. What do you see as the key friction point for people embarking on this journey of figuring this out, using these tools? Where does most of the opposition or the kind of preconceived notions, perhaps, I don't know how to term it, where's the friction for you getting operations and organizations to go, hey, we need to do this? Is it pain because they're not seeing enough revenue? Is it, what are those pain points?
I think part of the friction there to taking that jump, right, and moving forward, is that a lot of people are still looking at AI as more of a threat or a competitor versus a tool that can help them. I think that's the biggest conversation that I have, is they're still looking at it as, well, this is, and to be honest, I had the same thought process when I first came on, was approached by Keepme. I'm like, I used to be one of those gym rats. Like, I was in the club, I was at the front desk. Like, I wouldn't want something that took my job, until you take a step back and realize like, wait, actually, you know what? This is going to get more people in front of me so I can focus on the relationship part. So I can focus on why I got into the industry to begin with. Right. And that's the people part. That's working with the members and stuff like that. So I think it's a shift in how they need to look at it. Right.
Yeah.
Versus viewing AI or tech as a threat.
Yeah.
Because it's really not. It's really a tool that can help you substantially.
Yeah. And to add to that then on a less sort of people-y side of things and just a more practical side, quite often we would get questions around, oh, how is this going to work with our current tech stack? You
Right.
know, this seems really,
Right.
really complicated. How are we going to,
Right.
you know, how are we going to implement this? But the honest
Mhm.
answer is, if your existing CRMs are doing what they should be doing and they're built the way they should have APIs, right?
Yeah.
And with that, then you can connect into systems like Keepme and
Yeah.
others. And you know, then your teams, they're responsible for providing information that trains the agents so that they know the right thing to say at the right time and they understand the cadence of reminders and such and such. But until you have those conversations, or until you read a little bit, the misconception quite often from prospects is, this is huge and we can't
Yeah.
do this. Nobody in our business knows anything about AI. We can't
Yeah.
implement this. But actually, that's absolutely not true. You know,
Yeah.
it's, if you've got a
Simple.
CRM and there's an API, this can all be rolled out in a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah, no, I think it's part two, as you were saying, both of you, is the mindset piece on the moon, is how you see the world is a real, you know, are you an abundance thinker? Are you a scarcity thinker? Hey, Sal Pellegrino is here asking a question. Thanks, Sal, for attending. He goes, what does the first interaction with a new client look like for Keepme? So if you're a gym or fitness facility of any type, how does that first interaction with a prospect happen? Like, what does that look like?
It's really a conversation piece, right? You know, really digging into what the pain points are, right? Is it top of funnel?
Mhm.
Where are they seeing an issue in their cycle? And presenting the solve for it. A lot of times, you know, all the clubs think they're different, right? And they are to their own right. But a lot of the same pain points are still popping up, right? It's still that lack of the ability to get people in the door. It's that booking the appointment, so on and so forth. So we've seen a lot of those similar type conversations. It's just a matter of how do we make that adjustment, right? And that's where the AI portion comes in. So,
Yeah.
you know, showing our platform and how it works with the agent and its integration into your website, your social media, getting those responses right away, and just being able to show them the
Yeah.
natural conversation and how it can book right in immediately is really the first step. You know, we have that conversation, see about their brand, where they're at, where they want to go, and then, you know, provide the solution for it.
Yeah, it's about mapping the use case correctly, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
you can't do that by just launching straight into, hey, we've got this shiny new product, you'll really like it.
Yeah.
Do you want to buy it? You know, we have turned people away. We've had conversations, and they'll be like, yeah, we really like your product. We've got all this budget. We want to buy it, and then we'll get down to the nitty gritty about, you know, what problems they're facing, and they're like, no, 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 we just want to add AI into the stack. And we'll be like, well,
Yeah.
actually, well, then you're just burning more money again, right? You know, we need to understand that there is something that we can fix and solve for them. It's not just a badge to be worn. And
Mhm.
digital transformation is great, right? And everybody has to start somewhere. But
Right.
we want to be partners, and we want to be able to work with our customers to say, look, this is where you started. And we'll do that by even evaluating like some baseline metrics, like what is your conversion rate at this point of the funnel and what is it down here? So that, you know, when they've gone through implementation and they're a few weeks in, we can say, look how much that's changed just by having that 24/7 availability, or by having that empathetic, very human-like interaction at the right time.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah. Another question, what do we see as the future of community-based and hyper-localized marketing assets for individual locations? I'll take that first, and then you can tell me if you agree or not. So listen, what you should be doing is creating brief videos that are creating value and making personal humans part of expertise that addresses pain points empathetically, not selling. You should be doing a lot of production of low produced assets and video content, in my opinion, as a main thrust for hyper localized marketing assets that are relevant to the community, providing a lot of information, providing personality, That's what I would do for community-based hyper-localized marketing assets. But what do you all think? Do you disagree, or would you think something else? That's a quick answer. There's more to it, but anyway, I've made it quick.
Well, Bryan, I'll jump in really, really quick,
Yep.
equally quickly. You know, leverage things like WhatsApp communities, right? If you can get those telephone
Yep.
numbers and you've got
Yep.
consent to do it, then you've got an open forum to
Right.
do unpolished videos like member spotlights. You know,
Yep.
get your team involved and make sure that they're showing the members of that community what other active members of the community they want to join, what they're doing. So get your prospects into those communities, not just your members, and make it, you know, a good stream of it on a regular basis where they can see the real results and the real people. You know, it doesn't have to be shiny, well-packaged marketing all the time. People want to see the real.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Good thought.
People for sure versus
Yeah, humanize and futurize. So this is what we're talking about right here. Humanize and futurize. That's the strategic goal. Another quick question, then we'll wrap it up. Thanks so much. It's an anonymous attendee. Keepme is so impressive. Is Keepme supportive to fitness apps as well, or just bricks and mortar gyms? So do you all work with just fitness apps, or is it strictly geographically based?
Currently, we're bricks and mortar only because that's where we, you know, that's where
Your
so
bread and
many of
butter.
us, you know, in the leadership team, where we've all been operators in the past. So, you know, we want to apply our experiences in there and, you know, see the change there. But that's not to say that it won't come down the line.
Yeah, great. Well, listen, a pleasure, Hilary, a pleasure, Sarah. Thanks for sharing your insights. I enjoyed the conversation. Of course, for the audience, we'll be sharing this in podcast format. It'll be on the Fitzy YouTube channel, and you'll be seeing clips across social for the most important points. We appreciate your attendance, and thank you all for being here today.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Think that's us?
Yeah, I was just looking at the.
Have you got the list? There we are. Okay.